Hello and welcome everyone. In this video I'll show how I've painted the Kroot Carnivores. Before we start, I'd like to mention this new feature I'll be doing in this video. I'll explain the details later on. Here are the paint lists I've used. Alright, here we go. First thing to do is some prep work for the models. And I'll be using these drape cloaks I had laying around in my bits box. These cloaks didn't fit all that well, so I had to make a few adjustments to make them fit. What I'll be using is this DREMEL tool I have here. This is a very handy tool to have and they're not that expensive as well. This DREMEL tool is going to generate a lot of resin dust and I highly recommend you use some sort of safety mask for this step. I used the DREMEL tool to adjust the cloaks to fit them on the models and then polish them smooth. And in case you're wondering if this would work, yes it does guys. Using a small pin vise, I drilled out the barrels of the rifles. I filled in the gaps around the cloaks using some milliput. When everything had set and dried, I gave it a coat of Army Painter Uniform Grey Primer. When the primer had dried, I also gave it a light coat of this acrylic primer, just in case I forgot some areas of the models. So in this video I'll be trying out these Games Workshop airbrush paints. I really like the green tones, so I decided to give them a try. Alright, so the first thing you'll come across are these clumsy paint pots. I'll try not to go on a rant here, but it's really like filling up your car with a bucket. So just gonna have to do a quick fix and we'll be good to go. For most of my paints I use an agitator, which helps to shake up the paint. I've been using these BBs for quite some time, but you could basically use any agitator you like. Using Ogre Camo, I base coated all the skin of the models. I made a few soft shadows from below using Model Air wood. When this was done, I started making shadows a bit richer using red terracotta. The upper parts of the skin were given a coat of Elysian green. I also added some extra shadow here and there using Death World Forest. So time for some detail work. I attach a small strip of masking tape to this latex glove I'm wearing and then mask off some areas using the glove. By using this, I then gave the lower cheeks and eye sockets some color using magenta. Now I know this may seem a bit unusual and I'll try to explain it a bit more in the text below. I gave the eye sockets and quills a wash of Army Painter's purple tone ink. When the wash had dried, I painted the quills on their heads using royal purple. When this was done, I airbrushed over them towards the ends using white. Afterwards, I applied a layer of magenta to the quills. I decided making two different colors of quills on the models. I then applied some squid pink to the edges of the quills. To give them some variation, I painted two of the heads using scarlet red. When everything was done, the heads looked like this. Alright, time for the cloaks. I first painted the insides of them using red leather. When the base coat had dried, I applied some shadows to the cloaks using dark violet. Afterwards, I applied some dwarf skin to the edges of the cloaks. For the outsides of the cloaks, I first applied a layer of light brown mixed with ice yellow. Because the models are going to be mainly green, I decided to replicate something along the lines of this orange python skin. Using a mix of light brown and white, I applied some light areas to the cloaks. Next up, I applied a few spots here and there using Model Air dirt. I applied some beastie brown spots here and there in the same way. And for the final color, I added some red iron oxide to the cloaks. I then started painting some random lines using a mix of German grey and black. For the leather wraps, I used a mix of tan earth and plate brown. The gloves were painted using beastie brown mixed with tan earth. I then made a small shadow to the leather using burnt umber. The chest areas were base coated using a mix of medium flesh tone and dwarf skin. I then painted a microscopic piece of wrapping using game color bone white. For the quills on their arms and legs, I applied a base coat of Amarantha red mixed with dwarf skin. Afterwards, I painted all the nails of the models using Japan uniform. I applied a layer of tan earth and bone white to the bone parts of the cloaks. The metal parts of the rifles were base coated using cold grey. At this stage I had painted all the eyes of the models using Model Air white. I did this off camera. The tongues of the models were base coated using a mix of squid pink and red terracotta. Next up, I applied a small highlight on the rifles using light grey. When this was done, I base coated all the blades, knives and amulets using blue RLM. I applied some German grey to some random parts of the rifles for some variation. The wooden bits of the rifles were then base coated using a mix of burnt umber and wood. At this stage I'm going to blend the harsh dark lines of the cloaks a bit more into the other colors. I applied a light filter of light brown to do this. In order to seal in the paint and protect the models, I applied a thin coat of satin varnish to them. So at this step I will add a few highlights to the raised areas and edges of the models. Here I applied a light glaze of ice yellow to the areas I wanted to be highlighted, and then feather it out using a glaze of the base color. This will usually require a few layers to build up, depending on what color combinations you use. I shaded the edges of the chest areas using Amarantha red and medium flesh tone in the same way I did the highlights. The edges of the quills were then painted using Amarantha red. I gave all the nails a small highlight using bone white. I then started shading and highlighting the bone parts of the cloaks using a glaze of bone white and tan earth. I gave the tongues a small highlight using squid pink. I then applied a layer of Tamiya clear yellow over the eyes. I base coated the necklaces and rings using leather brown and then gave them a layer of liquid copper afterwards. Alright, time to add some color to the blades. I mask off some areas using my glove and then apply some Model Air white to the edges. For the shadows, I applied some intermediate blue in the same way I did the highlights. You could use masking tape for this step, of course, but I find doing it this way a bit more faster and easier. I then gave the blades an edge highlight using a mix of blue RLM and white. I did the same to the metal parts of the rifles using light grey. When this was all done, I gave the models a coat of gloss varnish in preparation for the oil wash I will apply next. The gloss varnish is essential for this step, as this will protect the paint from the white spirit and also make a smooth surface for the wash to flow over. So what I have here are a few artist oil paints and some odorless white spirit. I will use these to make a few oil washes for the models. For the skin, I mixed up a wash made of olive green, burnt sienna and Naples yellow red. I then gave the cloaks a wash made of burnt umber, burnt sienna and Naples yellow red. The chest areas of the models were given a wash of alizarin crimson, Venetian red and raw sienna. Next up, I gave the medals a wash of warm grey mixed with lamp black. The leather wraps and wood bits were given a wash made of Van Dyke brown, burnt umber and raw sienna. When the wash had dried for 2 hours, I used a makeup sponge dipped in white spirit to clean off the excess wash. After half an hour, when the white spirit was fully dry, I applied a final coat of satin varnish to the models. This will remove the glossiness of the oil paint and protect the models. When the varnish had dried, I then assembled the models ready to go on their bases. I've read somewhere these Kroots come from a jungle planet, so I prepared a few bases like this to put them on. I used their original size bases to do this. In order to attach the models to their bases, I prepared this mixture listed below. Alright, so here we have the finished Kroot Carnivores. I've had fun painting them up and really hope to do some more 40k models in the future. So I'll now show a few pictures of the finished models, and afterwards I'll give the details of this new channel feature I mentioned earlier.
Work complete.
Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb.
Okay guys, so here we have the details. It's quite a long story, so I'll give you some time to read it. And you can pause the video if you like, of course. It's basically a little voting contest with a giveaway at the end, and this is done through Twitter. If you have any questions, you can always contact me, of course, either by Twitter or in the comments. So I will leave you now with the miniature screen. I really hope you've enjoyed the video and that it was of any use to you. As always, thank you for watching, stay tuned for more, and take care.